So here's the thing about the Yoga Sutras. It's a step-by-step guideline for those of you that aren't yogis. The Ashtanga practice that Caitlin and I practice is Ashtanga means 8-limbed. So it's called the 8-limbed path that we follow, which is outlined by the Yoga Sutras, a text that was compiled by a man named Patanjali a couple of centuries ago, more than that. And so the Yoga Sutras give us step-by-step guidelines of how to conduct our daily life, how to be in our life. And so in my mind, nothing should be changing. Nothing should be different. You shouldn't be doing, I don't think yoga, and by yoga, I don't mean just asana. I mean the entire 8-limb path is not something that you do just while you're on the mat. It's something you do all the time. And that something that you're doing is learning how to control your mind so that you reduce your level of suffering in this world. Mm-hmm. And by so doing, you are able to benefit others and reduce their level of suffering. So what we mean by examine your mind or watch your own mind is anytime you're in an afflictive state, you're mad, you're upset, you're frustrated, you're lonely, you're whatever, you name the list, they're infinite of afflictive states that we go into when we don't get our way.
Right.
And we are like a baby sometimes. We just throw a fit when we don't get our way. That's a very immature mind at work. And so the practice of yoga, not asana, but the practice of yoga is about learning to rein in the habits of mind that cause you to not see clearly and to suffer unnecessarily. So that can go on 24/7.
Yeah.
No matter what the conditions. In fact, the worse the conditions, the better, because we're going to be, it's so easy for us to get sucked into being mad, to being frustrated, to feeling mad, to feeling really, like you're not getting your way. We're like king baby. And then in AA, they talk about king baby. It's that part of us that just wants to throw a fit when we don't get the lollipop that we want. And that's the cause of suffering. I swear in my coaching, this is the biggest part of the time we spend is really examining how our thoughts can be traced back to our need for safe, solid ground that will make us feel comfy and happy. Mm-hmm. And of course, the word is, there is no safe, solid ground. There is no certainty. There is no certainty, which is why an event like a pandemic that we're in now, every day people run to the television to find out how much longer we have to, isolate. And we don't know. Nobody knows that.
Right.
Not even Dr. Fauci knows that. We do not know how much longer we have to do this. So we might as well just calm down, settle down, and take the opportunity to really think about the way we are thinking.
Right. And so Patanjali, who created the Yoga Sutras for us, created this work, this doctrine of, during the axial era, right? So while all of this, and if you don't know what the axial era is, it's super, super interesting. It's a recommended black hole of information to fall into for days while you're home.
Absolutely.
But it's said that this was during the Dark Ages, right? Which is when all of these writings came out. the Yoga Sutras being one of them. And so I just wanted to see if you would touch a little bit on CabaYoga and the Dark Ages and the, what was going on when yoga was kind of surfaced in the beginning. And some people think that we're in the Dark Ages again now. And it seems like yoga has a really big presence during this hard time and is kind of coming to surface again, maybe. So do you have any insight on that, or can you talk a little bit about Kali Yoga?
What are you saying? A little bit about what yoga?
Kali Durga, the Dark Ages.
Oh, no, I don't know. Okay. I didn't know what that was.
Oh.
Well, the axial age really is a little bit before what we call in the literary history that I've studied, the Dark Ages, but definitely mashes up into it. It was this time in the East and the West, Eastern Europe and the Eastern countries as well as Western. Well, it wasn't Europe then, but the Western, what we call Europe.
Right.
There was this emergence of key figures and writers who were speaking from these deep elemental places, as if connected to some sort of open intelligence that the average person did not have access to. So you have texts, you have people like Confucius and Muhammad, and then of course Christ comes. We have Buddha 600 years before the birth of Christ. We have all of the wisdom, the wisdom texts that were created in the Hindu tradition. So you have this period of time in which these truths coming from very different traditions, but all having a core set of ideas that they agreed upon, or they didn't really communicate at that time, but that can be agreed upon.
Sure.
So today we have one book that I often reference in my workshops is Aldous Huxley's book called The Perennial Philosophy.
Yes, I love
so
that.
Huxley does a beautiful job of categorizing all of these central. I think he has 16 or 17 elements that he identifies as all of the traditions are saying. This is what is true. This is what is real. This is what we know. This is what God has given us. This is what the texts or the ancient wise people have, wisdom speakers have given us. And one of those is there's only one. That's the first principle. There's only one thing here. There's only one energy. There's only one mind. There's only one spirit, and we're all a part of it. No one is excluded. Nothing is excluded. So that's an idea. If you look at indigenous Indians, if you look at Far Eastern traditions, if you look at Middle Eastern traditions, if you look at Aboriginal traditions, and then of course the Christian tradition too. This is the primary thing. We're all one and the same thing. So yoga means union. Yoga means to unite. Yoga means to yoke the mind and the body, the mind and the spirit. So we have then, it goes on and on. I won't go through all of the other principles. That's a whole discussion in and of itself.
Maybe next time.
But I do think that's one of the reasons that yoga is so appealing and attractive now, is it gives an entry. It's a portal into these larger existential concepts and metaphysical concepts that really assert that we are all one body. Yeah. We are all one spirit. We are all one energetically. I'm taking a course, an online course in energy work, and it's true of energy. I mean, it's pretty amazing. So the thing about yoga and these concepts, these metaphysical concepts that can seem very complicated, is that it is the 8 limbs give you a different, people come to yoga in different ways. Like I came to yoga through asana, that is the postures.
Mm-hmm.
I was a runner, I hurt my knee, I couldn't run anymore, and I needed to move. And so I started taking yoga, and my first yoga was hatha yoga, which was great because I learned the postures nicely. But it wasn't until I found Ashtanga yoga that I knew I'd found my home. It
Same.
was so athletic, it was so powerful. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to move and I wanted to sweat. And so I really was coming at it at first as exercise.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people do. A lot of people come to yoga in that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, I began to learn there are other ways into it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe people are looking a little bit more than they have been in previous decades for something that kind of fills that sort of void, that metaphysical calling that we all have buried really deeply. Yoga may be just a new door for people to step into to start their own process, right?
Yeah.
And I love having these deep conversations, so I could just follow you and go super deep, but I'll take my father's advice and not get too ethereal. I wanted to talk to you as someone who is a life coach and so accomplished, and you've moved through these different areas of study that I'm guessing called to you at different times. I have some friends that are home now, and I know there are a lot of people out in the world who work was their life. All they did was eat, sleep, work. And maybe what their work was, their job wasn't necessarily their passion. And now they're home and they've got all this time, and they're not someone who's got, canvases and was an artist on the side or a musician on the side, or, they don't really know where to turn. They don't really have a thing, but they're home and they've just got, the days are, there's no end in sight, so people need to kind of figure out what to do with themselves. And I think not knowing what to do can also be very depressing. So is there any wisdom that you can give for anybody in that situation?
Well, yeah, there's a lot that can be said, I think. But I have to say that the first bit, I'm always loath to give advice. I've learned in coaching it's better to listen, because each one of us has the truth.
Right.
The calling is within you. So it's not like somebody else can really tell you what to do, but you can create the circumstances where you can listen to your own higher self and begin to hear those little and feel those little nudges that impel you to read that book or talk to that person a little bit more or try out that new thing. Just be bold and go, don't worry about being vulnerable or not good. Just do it anyway. If there's some little. And I think because we work so hard, we play so hard, we go out so much, we are so overstimulated, so much of the time, if somebody is in the condition that you're describing, it's because they haven't become familiar enough with their own inner solitude. So until you can get quiet and be with yourself for a period of time every day, you're not going to be opening the door for those nudges to come to you, for those whisperings, for those intuitive insights, or what we would think of as things that are actions of synchronicity, like, oh, what a coincidence that happened. See, I don't believe in that. I don't believe there are coincidences. Things happen because we open up and listen to what is we try to receive. We become better at receiving what is being said to us all the time. And so, not to promote my own book, I'm not promoting a book, but the method that I use, and the thing that I would say to somebody, because I can't say, well, take this class, take this art class. I'm taking 3 art classes right now, 2 classes in Buddhism, and I just started today a 2.5-year teacher training in meditation. So really intense, really rigorous. So I would say, what I would say to people is take a class online. There are so many, you can learn so many things online.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great choice.
Yeah, I used to tell my college students that. I say, you don't really need to come to college. You can get everything you need to know online these days. Yeah. But you wouldn't be getting me then if you did that.
So, yeah, you're right, though. I mean, when it comes to creating your niche, essentially you do have all of those little things that pile up, all of those little life experiences. So by prompting yourself to have those by taking classes and that's why that's a really great choice for someone in that state to make.
But I want to say, I mean, that I offer that, but I really want to say to them, the best thing you can do is take up a reflective practice of making every morning, take 5 to 10 minutes, make a list of the things you're grateful for, make a list of the intentions you would like to have for yourself, and then ask for help in doing those things.
Yeah.
So Tia, thank, intend, ask. It's a method. If they want to go onto my website, there's my blog. I've written many blogs about it. So, but truly, I think the practice of gratitude combined with the practice of intention will lead you to interests and passions and yearnings that you never were quite so clear were in you, but they're there. There's those seeds of interest, those seeds of benefit, those seeds of capacity are already in you. You don't need to go out there someplace to do that, to get them. They're already inside of you. And what we learn to do through a reflective practice like the TIA method, there are many others. It could be prayer, it could be journaling, it could be, there are lots of reflective practices. Mm-hmm. But I obviously have a bias toward the TIA method. I call it a pry bar. It's like a pry bar that opens up this sort of encased, energy that's within you that wants to emerge, that wants to be expressed.
Yeah.
And we need to find practices that will allow them to rise up to the surface of our consciousness. Does that make sense?
Definitely. I think, saying that as an additional practice, I think we all need so many tools in our toolbox to get to stay right, to maintain. And everyone needs different ones. It can't just be asana. It can't just be journaling. It has to be your own unique combination of whatever works for you. And the TIA method is fantastic. I've gone through several journals already, and it's such a great thing to start your day with gratitude. It really sets the pace for the whole day. It changes by starting that way. And then by focusing your attention too. I mean, obviously you don't have to do it in the morning, but by just focusing your mind and starting on that nice level of gratitude and then focusing your intention. And it's almost like, with the reading too, you're saying read something thought-provoking and you kind of chew on it throughout the day. It's the same thing with, you still have that gratitude base that carries you through the day, and you still have those intentions that you already wrote in the front of your mind that'll be there throughout the day. So it's definitely a wonderful method, and I love it. I've gotten it for my mother and some friends for gifts. And so yeah, we'll have to put a written plug for your website when we post this for sure. Are you still with me? Just wanted to finish our conversation with some questions that I have from some of our followers. I let some people know that I was going to be talking to you today, and I've got some great questions. I think you're hilarious. And so I have two that I kind of didn't forewarn you about that I'm excited about your answer. So one is, what do you regard as the lowest depth of misery?
Wow. The lowest depth of misery. Well, in my personal experience, it would be not feeling connected to that unified, universal wholeness. I think that is the source of all agonies in the world. People who suffer, people who are lonely, people who are disappointed, people who feel like their lives are not what they hoped they would be or what they should be, are, I don't want to say they are, but many times it can be from a sense of dislocation from your spiritual source.
Okay.
And I don't mean that in a, a traditional kind of religion-like way. I mean it in a larger metaphysical way, that we are all energetically one entity. And I think this virus is making that notion clear to us, in a very powerful way.
Yeah.
And so to
Good
me,
answer.
if I didn't have that connection, that to me would be miserable. I would be miserable.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Next question is, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think what I will hear is, I think I'll say, well, honey, you just didn't need to have to work that hard, really. I think that's what he'll say. And I think what I would want to hear is, we've been waiting for you.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. And then last set here of questions is, what is the best advice that you have ever been given, and what is the best advice you can give? So double question there.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to, I know, when I read that, I thought I knew exactly what I was going to say. So I hope you have time here. It's not, I'll try to make this story quick. But when, many years ago, when my mother was very ill and she was suffering, she was unhappy. Her husband had died and she was not well, and she just had no tools. She had no tools in her toolbox for alleviating her suffering. She was just miserable and uncommunicative. And as the first child of two alcoholics, I have always been the fix-it girl. It, sort of took up that very traditional role of thinking it's my job to keep everything calm. And so I was going through one very difficult period with her where I was just trying to get her to move, or I was always trying to get her to do something. Yeah. And to just help, just help. And so I was working with a therapist at that time, my beloved Carolyn Bender, who I worked with for 8 years, and she changed my life. And I could actually quote everything she said as to answer this question, but this is one of the most powerful things she said. So we were on the phone having a phone session, and I was crying and upset about my mother. And she said, let me ask you a question. Do you think that God is working any less in your mother's life than he's working in your life? And I said, well, Of course not. She said, then get the fuck out of his way. And I went, oh, you know, I was shocked. I said, Carolyn, how can you talk like that? She said, you got to get out of the way, Lezlie. This is not your job. This is not your job to fix your mother. Even if it were your job, you can't do it.
Right.
You just can't do it. So now there are a lot of concomitant things that have to go along with that. But that set me on a path. That was like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders when I got that. I mean, I just got that. It was like an arrow just shot right through me. And really the best advice that I give over and over and over, the single piece of advice that I think my clients are probably sick of hearing me say, is drop your attachment to blah, blah, blah. So I had an attachment to having a certain kind of mother. And I was miserable because I couldn't wrench her life around in such a way that she would be the mother that I wanted her to be. I wanted her to be happy too, of course. But I was attached to a certain version of her. And this is what I see with my clients. We get, and myself too, I do it all the time. I'm attached to this happening or getting this or accomplishing this or buying this or whatever, presenting myself in a certain way. We're all attached. We have so many attachments, we couldn't list them all. Yeah. But this is where working with your own mind becomes really important, because you begin to, by watching your mind, by doing your meditation, you begin to see where your attachments are. And then you work on dropping your attachments. And that's what the core work of Life Art Studio is all about, is learning strategies and techniques and habits of mind that are going to alert us to where we're holding attachment and causing ourselves to suffer as a result.
You said something to us at the workshop about you're doing something with the obstacles. Oh my gosh, removing the weapons of the obstacles or something along those lines. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I was probably using my chainsaw metaphor. Was that it? Where I was saying it's like you're walking down a path with a big chainsaw in your hand, and you're cutting down all the trees on the side of the pathway, yeah, and allowing them to fall in your own path, in your own way. And that's what we do so often, is that we literally create the very obstacles that will keep us from recognizing our attachments or from overcoming our attachments. We feed those attachments. It's because we're addicted. We're addicted to them.
Yeah, sick. All right.
It's human is what it is. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was great reconnecting with you. If anybody is interested in starting the Tia Method journals, they are absolutely life-changing, and you can find them on her website at www.Lezlie with a Z, Lezlie laws.com. And hopefully maybe we'll talk again soon, but I hope that things are better next time I talk to you.
I did too, Caitlin. Thank you so much. It's been great fun chatting.
Have a great day.
Thanks.